Hello everyone, Adrienne here with Just the Facts. I wanted to do a quick video today regarding this rock in the hat method that Joseph Smith used to produce the Book of Mormon. Members have asked me, what's the big deal? God works in mysterious ways, right? So I just wanted to take a few minutes to share the reasons that this was such a heavy item on my shelf and why I haven't been able to chalk it up as God working in mysterious ways. For me, there are 4 reasons for this. Reason number 1, it's simply not what I was taught. And of course, this stirs up other questions, such as, if they lied to me about this, what else did they lie to me about? And why would God's only true church have to lie to prove to me that it's true? And didn't I deserve to have all the facts so I could make a fully informed decision about my life's path and eternal salvation? I'm sure you get the gist. So let's move on to reason number 2. Joseph used this stone and method in a confidence scheme prior to using it to produce the Book of Mormon. His claim was that, for a fee, he could locate buried treasure by looking at this very stone in his hat. Unfortunately, he never found any buried treasure, and this venture got him arrested in 1826, the outcome of which remains uncertain. This page on LDS.org admits the outcome of the hearing remains a puzzle, and this page on LDS.org admits the outcome of the case necessarily remains elusive. But the Saints book recently published by the church says that the judge dismissed the charge. Now, I'm not sure why the church's own sources don't agree regarding the outcome of the 1826 hearing, but I do know that he was arrested for charging for a service that he was not able to render. Today, we call that fraud. And I'm pretty sure it was called that back then. I'm pretty sure that's why he was arrested for it. Anyway, it did trouble me greatly to learn that this is how the stone was being used prior to being used to produce the Book of Mormon. It did make me wonder if I could trust this person, this method, this stone to produce scripture, given the fraudulent manner in which it had been used beforehand. This whole mess, by the way, was what turned Emma Hale's father against Joseph, but that's another story for another day. Let's move on to reason number 3, which is the hat would have provided Joseph with a place to keep notes. This is important to me because I was very impacted as a youth by a question my father once asked me. That question was, come on, Aid, how could an illiterate 14-year-old farm boy have written the Book of Mormon without God's help? Good point, I thought, and that spent many years on my pros list. But eventually, I started thinking this through, and learning about this rock and hat thing was the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, with regard to this argument. Because what better place than in that hat to conceal whatever notes he might have needed to keep his thoughts straight? Either way, the entire statement is a mess, not because my dad would ever have lied to me on purpose, but because he was repeating a blind argument that had been thrown around by members for generations. And this argument is just so inaccurate. First of all, 14 was the age for the first vision, but it's not the correct age for the production of the Book of Mormon. Joseph was in his early 20s when he began working on the Book of Mormon. Duh, right? I totally should have caught that immediately, but I didn't, and I didn't catch the discrepancy for many decades. I've also since realized that Joseph was far from illiterate. As a teen, Joseph once told his mom he could take his Bible and go into the woods and learn more in 2 hours than she could if she were to go to church meetings for 2 years. And the King James Version of the Bible that he studied is no easy read. So this notion that he was illiterate or barely literate is simply not true. He lacked formal schooling, as did Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Edison, but he wasn't illiterate, or even what could be considered barely literate. It does appear that he was somewhat limited with regard to formal writing ability, but he had a scribe, and he was an amazing storyteller. His mom tells us, in fact, in her autobiography, that Joseph was entertaining the family with very detailed stories about the Native Americans years before he claimed to have obtained the plates. The Book of Mormon, not nearly as long, complicated, or well written as, say, Lord of the Rings or the Chronicles of Narnia, simply isn't an amazing literary achievement that necessitated divine intervention as I once believed. Members often say, yes, but it only took 65 days to translate the Book of Mormon start to finish. And this is another one of those blind arguments that sounds good, but it simply doesn't hold any weight. Let's face it, he had his whole life up to age 21 to come up with the stories that became the Book of Mormon. And he didn't publish the book 65 days after he claimed to have received the plates. He published it 2.5 years later. And whenever he worked on it, he had that hat. Was it really the rock that was telling him what to have Oliver Cowdery write? The rock that couldn't find any buried treasure? Or was there more than just a rock in that hat? We'll never know, but it is simply not accurate to claim that only a miracle can explain the book. Let's wrap this up with reason number 4, which I alluded to at the beginning of this video. This wasn't the only heavy item on my shelf. It's only one of many questionable aspects of LDS Church history. There are just so many problems. And not small petty things analogous to rust and chipped paint, as Dale and Ruth Renlund would have us believe, but serious problems with the most foundational aspects of the Church's history. More videos will be forthcoming, but for today, what is more foundational than the production of the Book of Mormon? As Ezra Taft Benson said, the Book of Mormon is the keystone of testimony. Just as the arch crumbles, if the keystone is removed, so does all the church stand or fall with the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. If the church saw it necessary to lie about how this keystone was produced for so many decades, the only thing I can say about that is that the only people who lie are people who have something to hide. So there they are, my 4 reasons for being so impacted by this rock and hat thing. Let me leave you with a quote and a question. The quote is by J. Reuben Clark. If we have the truth, it cannot be harmed by investigation. If we have not the truth, it ought to be harmed. And my question is, what if Joseph Smith lied, but Jesus didn't? Bye for now, and have a blessed day.